what if you're not sure if you need secret scanning? Where can you start?
This week, we've actually released our new point-in-time scan for exposed secrets. So in under 3 days since launch, this feature has already detected over 1 million exposed secrets across hundreds of thousands of user repos. It gives us great insights about the secret leaks found across your organization. So your GitHub perimeter, number of secrets, what kinds of secrets, if you have any publicly leaked secrets that are visible from your public repositories, and some of these other insights that we see here. We also share a notification when the report is complete so that you can navigate back to it and you have some additional options once it is complete, like downloading as a CSV so you can discuss it with your team.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Source Friday. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you're joining from. Thank you for being here today. You made it. You made it. I hope you had a great week. I am so excited to be here today because we're going to give an awesome community some love. We don't talk to these folks from these communities a lot. So I'm super excited that they accepted the invitation. But before we get started, let me double check that you can hear me, please. I'm completely traumatized from 2 weeks ago when I was going on all by myself. So I'd appreciate a little thumbs up on the chat if you can hear me, please. I think we should be okay. And also, while you're at it, let me know where in the world are you? Where are you joining this transmission from? What are you doing this Friday? Thank you, Lucky. Appreciate you. It's 10:33 p.m. Darnishwan, you are a hero. Thank you for being here. We're going to make it lively for you, okay? Don't fall asleep on us. Thank you, Ergen. Thank you, Manuel. Manuel from Ireland. It's late for you as well. That's awesome. Thank you for being here, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you, Seth. Thank you. Thank you. What a week in open source, huh? Lots of interesting ships, lots of interesting conversations, some dramas. I don't keep up with the drama, not as much anymore, but there's definitely drama that can be escaped. But one of the most exciting things that's happened in open source, I have to give the plug, friends, because not only is this our open source product, but also I got to meet one of the folks who worked on this, and they're amazing. And so a huge shout out to the GitHub MCP server team who released in open source the official GitHub MCP server last Monday, I believe. Is now going over 10,000 stars. So shout out to you, the community, who's going by that repo, taking a look, using it. If you have not used it, I'm going to share in the chat a link to it because I think you're gonna love it. It's really giving you the power of your information and everything you can access with. Well, that there is a tool built for that you can access with GitHub API, write in VS Code, and then you can use Bestie Copilot and any model that you like to do whatever you want with that information. But beyond that, the capabilities for actually doing things. I had a stream yesterday and we created our repo and even a couple of issues all from VS Code on agent mode. It was so easy. So huge shout out to that team. They're doing amazing work, and shout out to the Golang because it's a great programming languages and it's making this server super efficient and awesome. So check it out if you haven't, please. Again, this is Open Source Friday. This is a show where we celebrate the people, projects, and community that are driving the innovations in the open source space. Each week, you'll see me or my colleague Kadesha, and we get to talk to awesome maintainers, awesome creators or contributors to open source projects. And these are all folks that are making incredible difference in the way that we work. I'm super excited because today we had someone that's got an incredible trajectory, and we're going to talk about some of the things that they've done before, but then in particular to Oqtane, and that's the reason why some of you are here. Shout out to all the folks from India joining. I love you. It's so late for you, and you're here. Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you. All right, so we're super fortunate today because we have a true pioneer in the .NET open source ecosystem with us today. If you are a .NET developer, let me know in the chat. Give you a shout out too. I had the privilege of working. Actually, I feel like I work for Martin, my big boss. I think he started his career in .NET. I might be lying. Who knows? But I know a few folks from the .NET ecosystem. Had the honor of giving a workshop on GitHub fundamentals a couple of weeks ago for the Dominican Republic .NET community. Amazing community, amazing ecosystem. Our guest today has over 25 years of professional experience architecting and implementing enterprise software solutions, which is pretty cool. And in software years, that's 100. And he is the original creator of .NetNuke. If you have ever used .NetNuke, DNN, let me know in the chat, please. Let us know. Thank you. And yes, .NetNuke is not only an amazing project, but it's one of the most successful open source projects that are native to Microsoft as a platform. He's also a founder. He founded DNN Corp, which is a commercial software company that raised 3 rounds of venture capital from top-tier Silicon Valley investors. So for all of you who are thinking about how you can make open source your careers and build things on top of it that are going to make you money, this is a great conversation for you as well. His contributions to the community earning tons of recognitions. He's a Microsoft MVP, ASP Insider for over 10 consecutive years, awards of the Wazoo, 40 under 40 business awards for business in Vancouver, is member of the board of directors of the Outer Curve Foundation, and currently chairs the project committee for Microsoft's .NET Foundation and works as a technical director at Cognizant Soft Vision. That might be incorrect. I think I have that wrong. And more recently, he's created Oqtane, and that's what we're here to talk about. It's an innovative application framework for Blazor, where all the Blazor folks at, and it's amazing. So please join me in giving some sparkle and some stars to Shaun Walker. Shaun Walker, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Obviously, I'm a big fan of GitHub. I've been using GitHub for a long time, and it's my first opportunity to be on a show or an event related to GitHub. So this is amazing.
I love it. Was that like the longest introduction in your life? You're like, am I coming on this show or what are we doing here?
Yeah, I need to shorten my bio apparently.
Oh, we do have some .NET developers in the chat. All right, the shout outs were promised. The shout outs will be given. And I've lost you. Oh no, Random Coder, and you're a friend of the show. You always come and support us. Thank you for being here. Always helpful in the chat. So, and DNN Dev, sweet, awesome, Shaun. Well, thank you for being here. I get excited every time someone that's been in the industry for longer than a few years. It's exciting to come in Open Source Friday and talk about what they're building, because I think there is just so much context. And obviously the way you started building software 25 years is completely different than the way that people start building software now. Open source has changed a lot for the better, right? But there were so many interesting things about your trajectory, because you were definitely kind of ahead of the curve, of the Microsoft world curve, when it comes to pioneering and open source. And before everything was live stream and we all played together, it was a lot harder to do the things that you did. So I'd love to understand a little bit about your background. Like, how did your career in software development start? And folks, fear not, we're going to get a demo. But listen, I don't get to talk to people in industry for so long often, so I'm going to get my answers. So please, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background, that'll be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. So I feel like a little bit of a dinosaur when I have to admit some of these things, but so I started my software career in 1992. So yeah, that's a few years ago. And like most software developers, I started doing very basic things like tech support and junior development and kind of worked my way up. Originally, I mean, I started my software career before Windows came out. So all of my education, like in university, was all on mainframe computers, using languages like C. And then when I got my first job, it was on VAX Basic, on the VMS operating system. Yeah, like old school. And we were building financial applications in VAX Basic for school districts and municipalities to keep track of their accounting and inventory and various things. And so that's sort of how I got my start with software development. But I thought that things were a lot more interesting in the Microsoft space. And so by, I guess it was the late 90s, probably 97 or 98, I had made the transition over to using Microsoft technology. So this was web development, classic ASP, like very early web technologies from Microsoft. And then when .NET came along, obviously that was a huge change and very exciting time for developers because it represented a whole new way of building applications. And so I wanted to learn those new skills. And so I started creating a hobby application. At that time, it was originally going to be for managing sports organizations. And I built that all on .NET, the very first version. I had some commercialization kind of goals in mind when I built it, but of course, I didn't have sort of the resources in order to go in that direction. And eventually, I got to the point where I realized that I had built something that was quite interesting and not just specific to sports organizations, and that ultimately was released as .NetNuke and became like the very first version of that open source project. And to be honest, yes, I'm a pioneer because I started doing open source in the Microsoft ecosystem, I guess back in 2002. But I was pretty naive to open source at that time. I knew what it was. I had, experienced a bit of it because I had worked in the non-Microsoft community a bit. But as far as maintaining my own open source project, I had no idea what I was doing. And I actually have to give credit where credit is due. I think, so it was about 3 months into the open source project that I was invited to come to Redmond to have a meeting with Scott Guthrie. Because he had at that time sort of recognized what I was doing. He was interested in kind of cultivating more community and cultivating this open source atmosphere in the Microsoft community. And he basically came up with a way that he could sponsor me for 1 year so that I could focus my efforts on developing the open source software and the community around it. And it was interesting because the agreement that we came to, it was Scott Guthrie, in fact, that came up with things like he wanted me to distribute the software on SourceForge. That was a stipulation of the agreement. And like things that you never imagine Microsoft wanting to do in 2003, these were things that, Scott Guthrie sort of had in mind in terms of ways to get credibility for open source in the Microsoft world. And so I was sort of the beneficiary of his knowledge and wisdom there, and it actually helped, grow DNN into the huge content management system that it became. Grew a community, and also started making .NET a lot more open source friendly.
That is amazing. I had no idea that's how that got started. That it was Scott had a vision, and look at Microsoft now. It's incredible to think of that trajectory.
And now it's all in on open source. So
100% open source wins every day. So that community blew up, right? When did they come out? 2003?
Yeah, about 2003 was really, I guess, I guess it was March or April maybe when, because originally I released it under a different name. This was another thing. Scott said, probably needs a better name than what you've chosen, because I actually just piggybacked on the sample application from Microsoft that they had provided called iBuySpy. And so I just did a variation on that, which isn't a real brand name. And so he said, you've got to come up with something better than that. And so that's when I came up with .NetNuke, sort of paying homage to PHP Nuke and some of the other Nuke CMSs that were around on the non-Microsoft platforms at that time.
Amazing. And became one of the most widely application frameworks on the Microsoft platform. I don't know. Do you know top of mind like how many installations .NET had worldwide? Like,
So yeah, we were able to track some installations, and we estimated it was probably 800,000 to a million installations.
that's amazing.
And yeah, so that's a combination, of course, of production and non-production, but still, it was a lot of installations.
Yeah, no, and I mean, obviously, of course, beyond the installations, the ecosystem that just kind of boom both of this is amazing. That's incredible. So you had amazing success there. I had no idea your story started with Scott's like involvement. Like that's so cool to know as well. And then after such incredible success, how did you come to Oqtane? Like what was that transition point into building Oqtane?
Yeah, so as far as .NET Nuke was concerned, we got the open source project off the ground. It started growing. I couldn't do it alone, so I had a number of other partners that came in to help me with to manage the project. We eventually formed a company in 2006 called DNN Corp. And then I think it was in 2008 that we were successful in raising some venture capital. And then that really allowed us to scale up a real company behind it. And that's also the time when we released a commercial version of the open source project. So we still had the open source version, but we had a commercial version as well. And that obviously was able to generate revenue. And then we were able to do a lot more in terms of growing the DNN ecosystem than when it was just solely a pure volunteer kind of open source project on its own. And so I kind of stuck with that all the way until 2014. And then DNN Corp went through some challenging times. Like the growth just wasn't there. And so I ended up leaving DNN Corp at that time. And I didn't really do anything related to open source for a number of years, at least not hands-on. I was still volunteering with the Open Curve Foundation. I was also volunteering with the .NET Foundation. It was founded in 2014. And so I think you mentioned Martin off the top. So Martin Woodward.
Yeah, you know Martin as well?
So Martin was the executive director of the .NET Foundation for a period of time at the very beginning. And yeah, I would meet with Martin every week where we would chat about, what to do with the foundation, what its goals were, things like that. So yeah, so I've known Martin a long time. Martin's great. I actually just saw Martin a few weeks ago at the MVP Summit. So we were reminiscing about old times. Yeah.
I love that. I should have made the connection that you probably knew each other. Of course, a lot of people know Martin.
Well, Martin's career trajectory has gone way up. So I really he really deserves everything that he's achieved in his new GitHub role. Like he's an amazing, amazing guy.
100%. And for folks who don't know who Martin is, I have to say, so Martin is our director of developer relations, or is it? I might be butchering his title, but just if you've seen cool things that GitHub has done, or VP of Developer Relations, I demoted him. I'm sorry, boss. If you've seen that genuine care for open source communities, for education, for really helping developers, Martin is at the head of that. So we're very lucky to have him as our VP. Like he's tremendous. So cool. Okay. So what happened? I'm sorry. Let's get back in the story.
Yeah, no. So I wasn't doing much with open source for a period of time. In fact, I sort of pulled back on my community involvement quite substantially and more focused just on my enterprise development, my real job. And I was kind of missing it. I had pulled back so much that I even lost my MVP award status because I wasn't contributing enough to the community at that point. And so it was actually, Scott Hunter, and I don't know what his official title is now, but he's pretty high up in the .NET organization at Microsoft. He reached out to me, I think it was in 2017, and he said, have you taken a look at this new UI framework that we've developed called Blazor? I think you might find it to be quite interesting because it's got a good component model that's part of it, and you could probably build something with it that is very similar to what you did with DNN. And so I hadn't looked at it. And so I started experimenting. This is when Blazor wasn't even a real product yet. It was still experimental, I believe. And so I played around with some of the early releases, and he was right. Scott was right. Like, it was really interesting. And so I created a proof of concept for a very simplistic, like modular framework using it. And I saw the potential for that and thought, okay, this is, something that I could build, another framework in that had a lot of the same characteristics that DNN had, but build it using like the modern technology, .NET Core, Blazor, right? Do it in the modern way. And it took me a little bit of time to convince myself that that was the right thing to do, because when I had left DNN, I thought, I would never do another open source framework again. I was a little bit burned out. It's a lot of work managing an open source project. And so I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to jump into that again and invest a lot of time into that area. But eventually, kind of, I decided that that was the right path. And so that's in fact what I did. And that's when Oqtane was born. So that was probably 2018 that the official effort started around building out Oqtane. And the open source project wasn't, I think, initially announced until 2019.
Amazing. So combination of you were missing it, right? Missing being a part of that community. And then also Blazor was interesting enough, I guess. It piqued your interest to build something. So Oqtane takes sort of inspiration from .NetNuke a little bit, right? But can you tell us what problem were you trying to solve with it?
Yeah, so I think the big problem, and this was originally why I had created .NetNuke as well, was that getting started with a very large, powerful framework like .NET or Blazor can be a bit challenging at first for new developers, a bit overwhelming. And Microsoft tries really hard to create, starter kits or templates or things to help you get started, but they're kind of limited in what they're able to do. And so originally .NetNuke was really just, an application framework that sort of went above and beyond what .NET provided, so that you could, solve a lot of problems without doing a lot of work on your own. So it provided a lot of foundational capabilities, a lot of plumbing, things that you're going to need to do in every application. And then you could focus on building the more specialized things. And so that problem is a perennial problem, right, with every technology. And so when it came to Blazor, I saw the same opportunity there. So getting started with Blazor can be challenging. And so if you have a better foundation to start with more capabilities, and more guidance too, where things are sort of assembled already in a certain way that is going to work, then you don't waste a whole lot of time going down the wrong path, right? And experimenting. You can just, be productive right away. And so that was the idea behind Oqtane as well.
I love it. Can we take a look? Are you able to show us?
Sure.
Oqtane in action? That would be awesome.
Demo.
Thank you. And folks, if you're joining, you're watching, you just joined just now, we're just delighted to have Shaun Walker, creator of two incredible projects, about to demo Oqtane. If you have questions for Shaun, and we're going to talk about, because a lot about maintainership and things, at the end, I'll announce our next, we're going to do something else because I need to be able to talk to you again. So I'm sharing your screen now, Shaun. Tell me what we are looking at.
All right. So I think maybe before we jump in there, I will show. So this is the Oqtane repo on GitHub. And this is where the framework is maintained since the project was created. This is the actual homepage for the Oqtane open source community site. This is more of just a sort of a static site that tells you about all of the different capabilities that are available in Oqtane. But I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio. So this was basically got the latest version of the Oqtane dev branch here locally on my system. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run it. So I have the solution open. I've obviously already compiled it. But when I run it, because I haven't set it up previously, it's going to want me to install a database so that it can store the information related to the application. We can see here that there's a number of different databases that are supported. MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, and SQL Server. I mean, this was very important to support multiple databases because Oqtane is cross-platform. It's built on .NET Core. So clearly, you need to cater to the most preferred database platforms that are available in each operating system. I'm just going to go ahead and use LocalDB because that's the simplest one for me locally. I need to create a account so that I'll be able to log in to the application when I spin it up here. Oops. Enter my email, my name. All right, and I'm just going to use an empty site template. So site templates are basically what content you want to be created by default when you create, when you do an installation of Oqtane. If I do an empty site template, then I can build everything from scratch. So if we do an installation, it's going to go ahead and it's going to run all of the migrations to populate the different entities that need to exist in my database, which I had configured here. And so it doesn't look like much right now, but I'm up and running with a Blazor application. And if I log into this application using the account details that I just created, still not going to look very impressive, but when I choose this edit button, we can see that this page that we're on the home page has a bunch of different regions that I can insert content into. I also have access to a control panel here, which gives access to the various different types of content that I can manage or applications that might be part of my Oqtane environment. And so I have a lot of things that are available here that I can then inject into this page. There's also an admin dashboard. And so the admin dashboard gives you a whole lot of functionality that are common across most applications that you're going to build. So you're going to have site settings, sort of global settings that are, common across your entire web application. We can manage pages that are part of our application. We've got user management, role management. We can set up dynamic profiles for users. We have file management where we can set up folders and we can allow users to upload files to folders. We can manage our URL mapping. So if you're migrating from some other website or web application to Oqtane, you can provide the mappings so that you don't have broken links. We can track visitors if we want to. This is optional. We've got a search engine that's built into it so that it can index all of the content that's created as part of your site. We've got an event log. This would be very similar to what people have seen in .NET Aspire, but this was something that Oqtane's had in since the very beginning. So you can see all of the different activities that have happened in your application. So anytime something gets created or modified or deleted, it's always logged. Any security information or log in, log out, things like that are all logged in the event log as well. Oqtane is multi-tenant, so you can create multiple sites that are part of this installation. Each of those sites can have their own domain name, and so you can basically have a virtualization model where you can host multiple sites within the same installation. We talked a little bit about modules, but modules are sort of the building blocks of various types of content that you're going to manage. These are the different types of modules that are already installed in this installation. Oqtane makes it super easy to install other modules as well. I can say install module, and there's a marketplace where people can list both their open source modules as well as commercial modules as well. And in order to install these, it's just a matter of clicking download, and it'll download these modules immediately, much like an app store model. It'll download them into your installation, and then you can install them and they'll be up and running and immediately available.
Those are all amazing. I love the modularity of it. I want to, for a moment, briefly, if we can talk a little bit about multi-tenancy, because I think like you showed us this capability, but maybe most people don't understand like what that is huge. That can be so valuable for organizations, because then you can manage everything, like your internet, whatever pages you have externally private. That is super, super interesting for cost.
Yeah. So like, I can drill into that.
Money? Like, I love that. Like, that's such a great feature.
So if you're wanting to maybe squeeze more value out of your infrastructure, multi-tenancy is a great way to do that because you can host multiple sites within one account, whether that's Azure, AWS, a traditional hosting provider, or whatever. So multi-tenancy in Oqtane is built around this notion of sites, so you can have multiple sites, much like the way, I guess, for people who are familiar with SharePoint, right? SharePoint sites, that's a multi-tenant solution as well. If I want to create a new site, I can just say that this is a test site. I'm going to give it a unique URL. So my localhost /test is going to be a unique URL that identifies this particular site in my installation. I'll just use the default Oqtane theme and template. We also have the ability where multi-tenancy doesn't just mean that all, like, so you have a few options here. I can basically store all of the information for all of the sites within the same database, so a shared database model, or I can also create a new database and I can keep the data for each site separated from one another, even though the runtime is all within the same installation. So it has a lot of flexibility here in terms of how you want to manage your infrastructure. I'll just use the same database for now. And so
for privacy, like,
yeah, for privacy and data governance, you might want to keep the data separated from one another. And so this will basically spin up a new site. So this is my new site on /test, and it scaffolded out the standard set of content and pages in this site. But if we can go back to the dashboard, we can go back to the original site. And so now we have two sites that are running inside of this installation. Yeah, so that's multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy was something that .NETNuke also provided. It was like one of the killer features. It's something that is hard to build and not something that Microsoft has ever provided like tooling around. So it's always required custom solutions in order to support it. And so I wanted that to be a key feature that was part of Oqtane as well. So basically multi-tenancy and modularity, I think, are the two sort of main killer features of a framework like Oqtane.
That's incredible.
So this doesn't look like much at the moment. So if I want to go into my site settings, let's make it look a little bit prettier. So I'm going to use the this corporate theme that is available that anyone can download. It's one of the open source themes. So when I save that, it's going to change the look and feel of this site. I'm going to go back to the home page, and I have to configure this theme to say how I want it to look. Yeah, I want it to have a login button. I want it to have a search capability. I do want it to probably have a nav button. I'm going to call it just Contact Us, and I'll have it linked to just a contact, to an anchor. I do want to have a footer section on my site, and I do want to have a hero banner as well. And so if I save all this, all of a sudden it's all going to change. So now I have a nice hero banner. I can change the image if I want to. It's got the ability to launch a video, and it's got some footer information, and all of this is editable as well. So I can obviously put in my own company name, because this is all basically just content.
That was so fast. That was so fast.
If I want to dress this up even more, this is where the modules come in. So let's say I want to, maybe I have a list of clients. I can add that to the page. And now I have, I could put client logos, and it's got nice sort of animated effects that is all handled through JavaScript, things that you would expect in a modern website. Maybe I want to add an About Us as well. And so now I have an About Us. And so if I go into edit mode on this page, we'll see that each of these are individual module instances, and I can go in and I can edit the content. So this is the About section, all the content. So I have the ability to go in and edit this, and it keeps all the versions of the content that have been created, every modification, so I can roll back as well if I want to. And so that's how easy it is to add additional content. Let's say I wanted to add some other content to the page, maybe something a little bit more like, let's say, a counter. A lot of sites nowadays have counters where they have a set of metrics that they present to visitors of the site. And so I can add that. And now I have sort of this nice like ability to have different metrics that it counts up, right? If I go back, it'll just count up. And so this is a common thing you see in a lot of websites today. Maybe I want to have a countdown as well. So this would be something maybe on an events site, right? Where you that you have an animated counter of a countdown to a specific date and time. So all this is super simple to add. And maybe I would like people to even be able to contact me if they're interested in maybe my company's services. So I can add a contact form to the page as well. That's down here at the bottom. This particular item is like a more interactive module, so I have to configure its settings. So I can go into the module settings and I can say, you know, contact us. When someone fills out the form, they're going to be sent or presented with a message that says thank you. It's going to be sent by email. I've got to say who the emails are going to go to. Save that. And now, of course, I have a contact form. People can fill out the information. It has the ability, similar to CAPTCHA, to verify the visitor, and then they can basically contact me via email. So that's pretty powerful. But what if I wanted to go even further than that? So what if I wanted to add an additional page to my site? And I want to have a blog on this site. And I'm going to put it in my menu. I'm going to make it after the home page so that it appears right next to the home button. I'm going to make this page so that all users are able to see this page. And I save that. And so now I have a blog page. And coincidentally, I have a blog module. So I'm going to add the blog module to that page. And right now, there's no blogs that have been created. So if I go into edit mode and let's create my first blog, and whoops, just give it some really helpful content. And we will say that this blog is published. Whoops. Say it's published today. Save it. And I don't need to be in edit mode. And so now I have my first blog post, and I click on it and it shows the details of that blog. And so obviously a blog module is not just static content. This is all stored in a database behind the scenes, and it has versioning and all the stuff that you would expect. And the content of the blogs are being indexed by the search engine that's included as part of Oqtane. So you can even, search for blogs as part of the, like using keywords, and you'll be able to find them and navigate to that page. So a lot of powerful capabilities. Yeah,
that's
so
amazing.
that's sort of in a nutshell. And I know that in this demo, I focus more on the fact that you can build websites with it, but you can imagine that this concept of a module, like the blog module, is like a fairly sophisticated application unto itself. Companies could have all kinds of different specialized modules that they build that are specific to their business, and that you can build them independently from Oqtane, but host them in Oqtane, and basically add them to your existing site along with other types of content to build out a very rich and robust experience.
What kind of applications are people building with Oqtane? Because this is way more than like an application framework, right? Like I can see.
Yeah. So
it's like tremendous. What have you seen recently that's been interesting to you?
Yeah. So people are building like SaaS applications, right? So software as a service type applications where maybe in that case they're not taking advantage of the multi-tenancy, but they're just taking advantage of the fact that it's got the full sort of user management, role management built into it. And so you could build a complete sort of SaaS application with it. I've seen people who want to build services where they provide websites for a lot of different members that are part of their like sort of organization. So you have like an umbrella organization, and they want to provide websites to all of their constituents. They can very easily do that using the multi-tenant aspect of things. And in that case, you could create a custom site template so that each site, when you spin it up, has specific types of content that are there by default. So they're all sort of standardized. You can give them a set of themes that they, can have some variation in the look and feel. There are so many things that you can do with a platform like this. because it's not specific to any industry. And I think even it's the other thing with Blazor is that it's not just usable in a web context. Like I've shown you only an example here of using it in a web browser, but the Blazor technology can be used in mobile and desktop as well. Meaning if you build an application, then those Blazor components can actually be rendered in a desktop shell or even a mobile shell like iOS, Android, or what have you. So you have the versatility then to build an application that actually runs on web, mobile, and desktop. So we have some folks who are using it for that as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That actually brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, because there's a lot of folks who are coming in that are either new to industry. They probably didn't even know anything about .NET. And there's been a lot of growth in like JavaScript. There's so many new frameworks that are doing things similar, but not the same.
Right.
For people who are watching us now, maybe they're starting to wade in, they're wondering like, do I build this application with Blazor and Oqtane versus like one of the other JavaScript frameworks? Like, what would you, I mean, I see obviously the advantages, that modularity, like being able to, out the box, you're already web, mobile. But what would you think is one of the, I guess, those factors that people can consider if they're thinking about starting to build from scratch instead of leaning into the...
Yeah, so, and that is, it's a bit complicated, but so one of the things that has happened with Blazor over time is it's become more and more versatile, meaning like it has all these different capabilities that are applicable to different scenarios. And so Oqtane tries to support them all. So by default, when you install Oqtane, it's using what's called static server rendering. And then for the interactive components is using the Blazor server model, SignalR. However, it also supports the client model, which allows it to run on WebAssembly. And you can say, I want the whole application to be interactive. And so there's all of these different sort of switches. And you'll notice here that these settings can be set for each site in your installation. So this site might be using the static model. The other site I created might be using WebAssembly. That's totally possible. And that's possible because of what Microsoft has done when they created Blazor, right? They had created all of this versatility. And you really have to kind of look at the different scenarios that you need to support in your application. Like if you're building a public-facing website where you're going to have a lot of anonymous visitors, then static is definitely the best approach. That scales best. If you're building a web application, like a SaaS application, then interactive might be better because you expect like every user to be authenticated and you expect all those users to be interacting constantly with maybe a dashboard or, doing data entry, but a very interactive experience. And in that case, you choose interactive, and then you have the choice between SignalR and WebAssembly. And there's trade-offs between both of those. I think SignalR is really great for building internal applications where you know how many users you're going to have, because then you can match sort of the scalability, like the resources that you need to scale with the number of users. If that SaaS application has to be more external facing, then you could choose WebAssembly because that will scale a little bit better when you have a large number of users. But there is a lot to sort of comprehend when it comes to Blazor itself. Oqtane tries to make all of these different options that you have possible, but you still have to kind of understand how to match the requirements of your business problem to the technology. And then I guess your real question was, how would you compare this to other JavaScript frameworks like Angular, React, or Vue? I think so. Those frameworks are also changing, right? Some of them are becoming more full stack, so that you can use, the JavaScript technology both on the front end and back end. Whereas Blazor is trying to do that with C# on the front end and back end. There's a lot of comparables, and there's a lot of, I think, differences. But it's a bit challenging, I think, to get into that. I think if you're a Microsoft developer, and you know C#, then Blazor is a natural choice for you, because then you can limit the context switching you have to do. You don't have to keep switching into other languages. Whereas if you've always done JavaScript, then probably Blazor is not going to be a natural choice for you, right? You're going to feel comfortable in the JavaScript environment, and you're probably going to choose one of the many JavaScript frameworks that are out there.
That's fair. That's fair. But listen, I'm always team stretch yourself a little. You if you never try Blazor, give it a go.
Yeah.
Try it out. I mean, you definitely use Oqtane, because it's going to make it out of the box much more enjoyable experience. But thank you so much for taking the time to address that. I know that was a little spicy there. All right.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing my demo now. But yeah, I think we were going to talk about sort of future.
Yes, let's talk about the future, because I mean, the software landscape is changing so much. It's changed a ton since you first created .NetNuke, like a ton, and it continues to change. So what did you see the role of, like, well, for one, generally speaking, application frameworks, like, evolving as a whole, and then of course Blazor and Oqtane?
Yeah, it's a good question, because if you believe what you are reading lately, then you would think that, in not long from now, we'll all be just vibe coding and magic will just be happening and applications will just, come together very simply. I have a hard time imagining that's going to happen anytime soon. But I do think that the frameworks are going to have to evolve to become friendly towards AI. Meaning, it's just another interface that developers are going to want to use to be able to generate applications. And so this is where, like, you let off this show with MCP, right? And the fact that GitHub has released their MCP server, I can imagine most frameworks are going to want to build their own MCP server around their APIs. Because it just, really, I think MCP is a game changer, because you can now imagine a standardized way of allowing a chat client to interact with almost anything, right? That's what we were waiting for, is like to have that standard, right? Because I mean, to be fair, we've tried to build some custom things to build, like, to provide integration between chat clients and things like Oqtane or other things. And it works, but the fact that it's not standardized just makes it really painful.
Absolutely.
And so MCP is a real game changer.
Yeah. Go ahead. You mentioned AI, and I wanted to ask about if there is a modular integration with AI components into, because I feel like we didn't ask that. And I have to ask.
Yeah, I know. So I was sort of, I guess, I was on the fence a little bit about when the right time to wade into the AI area was for Oqtane. And I think we're there now. Like, I mean, at the MVP summit that I attended a couple of weeks ago, you can just tell the conversations are different. You can tell that there are certain things that have matured to the point where you can, they're almost standards that you can count on them being around for a while, right? They're not going to, you're not going to make a big investment in implementing them now. In 3 months, they're going to disappear, right? And there are some aspects around AI that has happened. So in particular, in the Microsoft space, the Microsoft.extensions.ai abstraction that was created, I think it's expected to be officially released as like a GA in a few months. But it's been under development for quite a while now. It's solid. Like, it allows you to integrate with many, many different LLMs very simply, and provides you a standardized interface so that as an application developer, you don't have to worry about things changing with any of the, like, specific LLMs, right? You have an interface. That makes me real comfortable to integrate something like that with Oqtane. So that's on the roadmap. And once that's in there, it opens up a whole set of possibilities. Like, you saw that Oqtane can be used for content management, ChatGPT or those GPT type generational kind of technologies are really great for dealing with content. That's a no-brainer. There needs to be the ability to be able to, like, optimize the content that you create or generate content for you in the context of a site. So that's something we're going to be adding. Oqtane has a headless API already, so building an MCP server for it is also a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So there's all of these opportunities around AI that we're planning on doing as part of our next major release, which would be Oqtane 6.2, which would be hopefully available in a couple months.
That is awesome. I cannot wait to see how you're going to evolve into this new era. And I have to say, I appreciate the fact that you said you needed to wait to see when the moment was right. This is, you have a lot of folks that depend on this technology, and we can all just be throwing like caution to the wind, and that's what we need, like the sensibility that comes from experience.
I
And
think the interesting thing there is open source projects, they do have a different governance model, right, than commercial software, but a lot of them, and Oqtane is one of them, still have this belief that you shouldn't be breaking, you shouldn't have breaking changes all the time. You shouldn't be breaking APIs, because if people are counting on you and they're building their own solutions, you've got to kind of preserve things for them in order for them to feel comfortable that your technology is there for the long haul. And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't feel comfortable jumping into AI right away, is because I didn't want to have to force breaking changes on people. And so now I feel I can adopt some of the mature parts of AI, and the users of Oqtane are going to be fine.
I super appreciate that, Shaun. Thank you so much for sharing so much of that vision and your thought behind it. I had one question earlier, and I'm sorry, but I have to ask, because there was a question about time management, and we're gonna folks, Shaun has graciously accepted to come and give a talk that he's given about maintainership and this entire experience of supporting a project of this size. And we could probably get into more details of that then. But I have to ask, and thank you, Lucky, for the question. How do you do this all? How do you get time to work on open source projects and then having commitments to enterprise software? I think that's the million-dollar question.
I think that's difficult for a lot of people, because typically working on open source happens outside of your regular full-time job.
Right.
Unless you're in a company that has a large dependency maybe on open source, and they see the value in you participating because they're getting value out of it as well. And there are folks that are in that situation as well. I guess I've been lucky, and you're right, we'll get into this, I guess, when we have our next session, which is more about open source sustainability. But I've been lucky enough that I've been able to devote full-time effort on open source for probably 12 years, between my efforts on DNN and then my efforts on Oqtane. So, but it takes some effort to be able to transition and find a business model that works, so that you can actually focus on developing a product. So, we'll talk more about that in the next
yes, for sure. And I'll be sure to announce it and put it on these notes so that folks can come back and make sure that you tune in for that. Shaun, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I have to admit, I've never seen the framework, and I'm familiar with Blazor, but I've never actually. I'm excited. I'm interested. Now there's a use case there for, I think, for everyone that's watching, of something that they've been looking at building. And what an easy way. I mean, you did this in 20 minutes and just show the modularity, show all the different options, and that flexibility is huge. You're trying to keep it simple for developers. I love your tagline, and now I'm going to butcher it. But if you know it by heart, please say it, because it's so great. And I think it captures the essence of what
the tagline is build applications, not infrastructure. And it's kind of loaded, because I think it's not necessarily in line with what a lot of software developers think currently. We've gone through this phase where everything needed to be microservice based and have this huge infrastructure with containers, and things got very complicated. I personally believe that the majority of applications are not that complicated, and they don't need all of that sophistication. So keeping things simple, focusing on building an app, and trying to minimize the amount of infrastructure you build, I think is important. So
There you go.
that's
That is not a hot take, friends. That's just the way it is. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Shaun, thank you so much for being here today. For folks who are looking to connect with you in social, I'm going to share your on X and Blue Sky under the same handle.
Yep.
So, friends, if you are on LinkedIn right now watching us via LinkedIn Live, I dropped the link to Shaun's LinkedIn. So go ahead and follow him, connect. Can't wait to see what Oqtane is going to be up to in the next year. Thank you so much for coming by and sharing so much of your career and this project with us. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, friends. Don't forget to go by X, connect with Shaun. So good, right? It's incredible to talk to people who have a long trajectory, being able to do open source, build a business, and then have such great experience and sensibility about the way they're doing it all. So appreciate all of you being here and sharing and taking care of each other in the chat. We're a team of one around this part. So thank you for answering each other's questions. All of you are the GOATs. Thank you for being here. I will be sure to come back to this very recording, whatever it is that you are, and drop in the link to our next conversation where I'm going to sit down and talk to Shaun about open source sustainability, something that he is very familiar with, long trajectory of contributing, running, and building in open source, and something that is going to be relevant to all of you. So I'll be sure to share that. Make sure you follow Shaun. Make sure that you go on the GitHub repo and leave a star on the Oqtane framework, please. And listen, if you've never tried Blazor, sometimes we got to surprise ourselves. You might find that this might be the thing that you were looking for. So it's easier to pick the hyped out things, but you never know. This might be your framework. This might be the thing that you didn't know you needed. So go give it a look. Leave a start on the Oqtane framework. And yes, Angel Pacer, it looks very interesting. So if you end up building something, please let me know. DM me, send me a ping, smoke signal. I love to know. I'll send you some stickers. And then, of course, if you want to contribute to this, is an open source project, so go ahead and contribute to it. Thank you all so much for being here. You are amazing. I'm going to leave you with a video of awesome project that's doing things to try and, I think this is the one about saving the planet, y'all. We need it. I'm going to leave you with that video. Please don't forget to tune in next week for another Open Source Friday. And in case you missed it, we are streaming a ton more now. On Thursdays, we have basically all day streams, starting from the UK time zone. My colleague Chris Rennington has a Robert Duck Thursdays at 5:30 Eastern. I don't know you folks on the GMT time zone, what time that is, but it's for you. So be sure to tune in. And then during the day, you'll have a stream in Portuguese, a stream in English by my colleagues Cassidy and Pachi. And then we're also building in Spanish. We did our Jueves de Quack. Gotta call it something else. So Thursdays is your day to spend all day long with GitHub, building different things, practicing new languages. Why not? Both programming and spoken. And then next week, we have a couple of events that are going to be happening. We're going to be having a couple of VS Code release parties to give you all the updates on what was new on Agent Mode in its last release. And of course, I have to say it again, because like I said, that team is amazing. Please go by and check out the GitHub NCP server and give it a go. And if you have an idea for a tool, or you want to contribute to a project that is just starting, this is a good time for you to get in it. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Girl. Thank you, Dr. Fatma. Appreciate you all being here. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next week.
Open source software powers the internet. How you write your code and the repositories you lean on can help reduce emissions. There are over 60,000 climate-focused repositories on GitHub that you can plug into. From tools to reduce the emissions in your code to visualizations of our electricity grid. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm an engineer, coder, and co-author of Speed and Scale, an action plan for solving our climate crisis. I'm excited to share a partnership between GitHub and Speed and Scale on a climate action plan for developers. At Speed and Scale, we developed a roadmap that shows how we can go from 59 gigatons of emissions and get it as close to zero as possible. The Speed and Scale plan lays out 10 objectives for emissions reduction, with the largest coming from the electricity grid. And we need your smarts and ingenuity as developers to target those 24 gigatons. Open source software represents a huge decarbonization opportunity. It can help every climate objective move faster. Check out our climate action plan for developers to learn how you can contribute today.